Evening. Well, this one is a bit one. It's really beautiful to stand here and look out and see everyone gathered tonight for the final reading in our Fellows Reading series. We are finishing strong with our 2 second-year fellows, H.R. Webster and Vedran Husić. Everybody give me join me. And please join me in giving a huge round of applause to all of the 2021-2022 fellow class. Been such a joyful, kind, talented, and brilliant group. Tonight, as we celebrate HR and Vedran, we really celebrate all of our fellows and all of the work that they've done over the past 7 months here in Provincetown with us. So please join me. So just a couple of brief remarks before we start. Of course, the Fine Arts Work Center is committed to supporting emerging artists and emerging writers and investing in them at a critical moment of their creative development. And we couldn't do that without the support of all of our friends and partners, many of whom are in the room today. This month, we've launched what we're calling our April Fellowship Fund, where we're inviting people who have been positively impacted by the work of our fellows and this incredible program to please continue supporting us and consider making a gift to support the future of the program. And if you're interested in doing that, you can just visit us on our website, www.foc.org. I also want to take a moment just to celebrate, shout out the staff of the Fine Arts Work Center. As we approach the last reading in our reading series, I want to make sure I take a moment to thank Naya Bricker, Andrew Meredith, Mi Young Sohn, Bailey Bob Bailey, Jerome Green, Dawn Zimmerle, Susan Blood, and Kirsten Anderson, who really without the, exactly, and Vicky Tomeko. It's a lot of love that goes into presenting the fellowship program, and I'm so grateful and honored to be supported by such a talented team. So really, let's get to the heart of it. I'm going to bring up my colleague Andrew Meredith, past fellow, brilliant writer, and current writing coordinator, to introduce our 2 featured readers tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Just a note to say that Vedran has actual copies of his book, Basements and Other Museums, in the back tonight. We're saying $10, Vedran? $10? A little more? Okay, that's the low number. Okay, $16.95. Jeff is saying. Hannah has a book you can pre-order tonight through Jeff, right? And it's What Follows, and it's also published, like Vedran's book, by Black Lawrence, which is a nice little piece of kismet. And Hannah is going to announce Broadside for sale. You're going to do that? Okay. So tonight is an emotional night, not just because this is the last fellowship reading of the year, and not just because this is our farewell to our 2 really fantastic second years. Hannah and Vedran, thank you, really thank you for how you have carried yourself this year. I think second year fellows are really important to how the fellowship year goes. And you really have helped create like just a really great spirit that we've had all year. You both have so much warmth, intelligence, of course, but really warmth and heart. And there's a certain gravity to you both, even though you're both so young. So thank you. This is also an emotional night because this reading is taking place right in the middle of a 76ers playoff game. You know, I've always heard that art is about sacrifice. But I didn't get it before tonight. Hannah, you ready? Okay. In addition to the Fine Arts Work Center, H.R. Webster has received fellowships from the Vermont Studio Center and the Helen Zell Writers Program. Her work has appeared in the Massachusetts Review, Poetry, Black Warrior Review, Ninth Letter, 32 Poems, Muzzle, and Ecotone. Her collection, What Follows, is coming from Black Lawrence Press in June 2022. Her poems and more can be found at hrwebster.com. Please welcome H.
All right. I'm going to get all my thank yous out of the way now. Thank you to Naya and Jerome and Bob and Andrew and Mi Young and Baz and Sharon for all that you do to keep the Fine Arts Work Center working. Thank you to Pat here tonight for the People's Parlor, and to Vedran, yes, the People's Parlor, Vedran for reading with me, and for the collaboration on the broadside, which I'm not actually going to read that poem tonight, but because you're going to read it when you go and look at Imsaki's beautiful broadsides. I thank my partner David for caring for our pets and our home while I was here, and for caring for me. I want to thank Pink Full Moon, and for you all for being here under it. And biggest thanks of all to the fellows, being so open-hearted and astute. I really love you all. So I'm going to start by reading 3 poems from the book, and then I'm going to read 3 brand new poems that I've written while I was here at the Work Center. And I'm going to start with a love poem. It's called June. Because the fridge is broken, we have no milk. Because the night is full of stray cats, of firecrackers, of shadows, of sugar locust, loosed sirens pressed against the door, we fumble with the keys. Because the fridge is broken, the house smells like fruit flies, warm bowl of water. Because the pepper spray is in my eyes, lashes, brows, and hair, my skin is not last week's skin when we jarred honey, cranking the spring release handle to spin the frames until droplets flew and, breeze caught, landed on my elbows inside, which you kissed. Because the cops threw you to the ground, your ribs purple. Because you got up to run, hands bound, to pull the police from me, your ribs purple doubly. Because the pepper spray is in my eyes, lashes, brows, my face is a stranger's. Because my eyes can't open, I only know I am a stranger from the photograph a friend took. I am at her kitchen table. I am on the phone, spelling your name. Each letter is also something else. S as in O, as in N, as in the huge I on one side of my face, 2 faces sewn together. Because the lawyer needs your date of birth, I am with you in August, suddenly, and you want meat to eat and sex and to say hello to the neighbors on the stoop with the secret glow of, it's my birthday, but no one else knows it. And your smile, and I am the August we moved here, slept on the twin air mattress, swallowing us belly to belly all the night. The box fan, the wasp nest on the lintel, the bottled water to brush our teeth. Because we walked in the sun for hours, because we said no more and would not let the cruiser pass into the thick of the crowd, and someone broke the windshield, someone kicked the door. Because we have no milk, you bring a bottle of vegetable oil to unbraid the tear gas and capsicum from my hair. Because I brought my right hand to my face to shield it, my right hand is red and present and angry in a way I am grateful for, because it says, I am a hand, I am a hand, a hand, a hand. I think, yes, I could use this for breaking. Because my hand is noisy, I make noises too, the noises of a dog dreaming, running, and biting air. Because my body wants to continue to be, it carried me through the streets. It carried me over the chained gate of the parking lot, over the hedge and the daylilies in the park, although I crushed them. Yes, I crushed some lilies with my feet because I could not see but could hear the men behind me. Because the police are murderers, we shouted. They need to be destroyed. Because warm water is a match and I am rough paper, we shiver in the shower. Because oil is oil, we slip and fall together. Because oil is oil, we drop the bottle too. Because little envelope of keys, because slip of soap stuck to the underside of the new bar, because crane fly lost in the ceiling's deep corner, because a new world, because Nina Simone said it could look like no fear. Because we have this in common. Apples eaten past the core, chicken bones stacked, sucked on the plate. You scoop handfuls of oil from the shower floor and into my hair, my brows, my lashes and eyes. I hold the arches of your feet in my hands, your chest pressed against my back. Sweet wet machine, the heart, the oil begins to tug. So that's a poem from the summer of 2020, and actually the day after the events of that poem, I got a call from the Fine Arts Works Center to come back here. So it felt like a good place to start, and I know summer of 2020 feels like it was both yesterday and like 30 years ago, and we didn't really know at that point how COVID was transmitted, and in some neighborhoods, including mine just outside Detroit at the time, there were fireworks like all day, every day, and it was this mystery that everyone was like, where are these coming from? And I think though we have figured out how COVID is transmitted, we still have no idea where those fireworks came from. One more poem from that time. And it's a poem called My Mother Says I'm Gonna Flush the Toilet Now. My mother says I'm gonna flush the toilet now at the end of our call. She wants me to know she wasn't peeing while we spoke, just hiding in the bathroom, so my father would not know we were on the phone. This morning, she helped the young men from down the road unload the hay into the close darkness of the hayloft. The wet spring means she needs extra bales to tide the herd over. She calls them the girls, the animals she loves and names and will kill to eat. The air in the barn is thick and moated. The cobwebs garland light while the door swings wide. She forgot to wear her mask to keep her busted lungs from the boy's wet breath. My father is angry. He won't say it and she won't either. Low below the running tap. He's angry the way I remember, the way he lifted his hand over her body like a rabbit trap, a wire noose sprung back and hooked to a whipping edge. After she flushes and hangs up, I call him and pretend to hear the story for the first time. He is in the kitchen, his fingers graphing viral tolls in the air, potatoes foaming over on the stove. What if fear of punishment is not what makes us good? He wants to know what precautions I have taken. The blue-gloved fingers selecting unleaded at the pump, the empty buses breezing through the four-way stop, squatting to piss the tractor trailer so I won't enter someone's house. I don't tell him about the woman punched in the head by local cops, the flag we burned, the broken cruiser window, the tear gas cough. It's been unseasonably hot, I say. The dog hates the fireworks and the neighbor's heavy metal through the wall. I'm still sewing masks. The rent is due, the bars are open, but no, gone inside. It's hot here too, he tells me, quiet. Only the crab apples make pink noise in the corners of the mind. The feeder pigs loose in the yard flop with sunburn, their shorn tails useless against the hatching flies. My period came early, after we were gassed. I pulled off the pepper-sprayed mask. I ate hot, greasy chicken from the tienda with my dirty hands, screamed at a helicopter, and it screamed back. I say it's hot, yes, though it threatens rain every afternoon. He thinks my mother needs to be punished so she will not get sick and die. He will not touch her the rest of the day or touch what she has touched. She's in the garden. The plants are little torches in the soil. Who would I be without punishment? I hear the seedlings blazing, cracking in the earth. I hear her put her naked fingers to the flame. One more from the book, and I wasn't going to read this, but then I got these pants from the free box in the Fellows Lounge and thought I needed to read one of my many cow poems. So this poem's called The Calf. She was born too slow, hooked hip, hooked breath. She could stand, nurse, but could not stand and nurse at once. The udders dripping purse just above her reaching. Her mother rubbed the afterbirth off against the shingled door, streak like a slasher handprint on the near side of the window to let you know the mask, the tooth, the saw, and child were inside all along. My mother brought the calf to live with us in the shower stall of the pink carpeted master bath, where I loved her through the frosted glass. My hair was a wasp nest then. We had 5 shoeboxes filled with dropper drinking baby squirrels. All my teeth were tied, slamming doors. She lived a week. Sucked my fingers to the quick and smelled of sick. Our cemetery was already full of glass-crazed crows, a raccoon shot when he wouldn't look away. The quails we raised from eggs, holding them to the incubator bulb to see the chick sharpening inside, like muscling a telescope into focus over a blue-red star. The loose joints of death when we the way I pretended to be asleep when we pulled up to the house at night. Close my eyes and think, look at nothing, want nothing. I was certain they would see me staring through the pink dark of my lids, say, get up, and walk yourself to bed. All right, I'm going to read a couple new poems now. So almost exactly a year ago now, my partner and I lost a friend to an accidental overdose. It's almost exactly a year, and this is a poem for him. It's called Grief for Sydney. Your pillows smell, swollen lid of a jar. Cling peaches, verge of rupture. Pampas grass, braiding, unbraiding, rebraiding. Red scar on back of left ankle. Sawing lasso of rough lead, tying hound to brush heap. Bottle rocket char on cement, nosebleed mar on your coverlet. Knee-deep poison ivy, nettles, knee-deep jewel weed, ruinous nonsense song, cat with an abscessed tooth, rubbed blister, buck of a high note. This is not a song for you, dearest guest, but for David, my heart, my little boat, who loved you with his whole. I wish it was enough love to lay in its waves' low pause. The Turtle. On the 2-lane highway to Winchester, New Hampshire, the snapper squares up and hisses on the double yellow line. 2 small boys observe over the blunted lip of the window cracked to let in air, their daddy creeping up behind the turtle. As though they needed to see so clearly that even the safety glass obscured too much. Daddy has tattoos all over his body, scurrying up his neck like fire ants when you pour boiling water on their nest. Across his lower back, a Confederate flag, a slab of color spread over his dimpled spine, not as though hanging in the wind, but presented like a sheep cake, with thick frosting so sweet it burns the tongue. He grabs the turtle's tail to drag her from the road. The turtle snaps her neck around and whips her mossed carapace to face the man head on. I let my engine idle, thinking of my mother who stoops to with a shovel kept for this purpose in her trunk, any snake from the road, even copperheads. I have seen a snapper strip a white duck of its spine, leaving the length of it, tail to beak, at the center of a scummy pond. She could bite the daddy's finger off, though, in fact, the human jaw, for example, mine, has more biting force. My boyfriend rolls down the window of the car to shout, "Good luck, turtle man," as I cross into the left lane. Down the road. What is to be gained by not speaking to him in a human way, he asks when I protest. What is to be gained by speaking at all? There is nothing to be gained by either choice. The moment is meaningless, as most moments are, and yet, eventually, they make a life. The seatbelts tighten across our chests when I brake to crush the turtle or frighten the man, a function that feels more like instinct than mechanics. This snapping turtle has been on for 200 million years. She can feel the planet's electromagnetic force, live without breathing under the ice all winter. They just found a Greenland shark alive since slavery began, then ended. Turtle and shark, their faces both frightening and absurd. Forget about Daddy and the two boys drinking in the scene. They will only remember the turtle, how he tries again to grab her by the edges of her shell and stumbles when she cranes her wrinkled neck. They will step into the lake with their hands cupped over their private parts, scared, like all little boys, that the turtle will bite them off. They will eat snapper soup, sweet with sherry, as I have, the butter iridescent on the gravy surface. Why am I so angry that my boyfriend spoke? Our arithmetic of complicity has simply differed here. 30 miles down the road, we round the bend to my mother's farm. Hunters have been shooting too near her pasture's edge. I part the strands of barbed wire and cross to where the truck is parked. I've seen you on my trail cams, scaring off the game, he says, his ball cap embroidered with the gold insignia of a militia that intends to hang my mother and I, the local Jews, from lampposts once the swamp rained. I apologize and smile, pull off my raincoat's hood so that he might observe my long blonde hair. We walk the logging road down to the reservoir's fenny shore, watch for the wrinkle on the water that means the turtle is there. Around us, the August woods are so green they pulse. In a week, Kyle Rittenhouse will shoot 3 men in Kenosha. I watch the footage until the boyfriend takes away my phone and lays it face down beside the bed. The video loops into the floorboards, glow and slam of guns trapped under its shell. I can still see the boy after he tripped and fell, hands and feet pedaling in the air, blue gloves. People run towards him and away. He shoots again. The little boys in the car, I cannot forget them, actually. The wrinkle on the water surface, wild ducks pinwheel up onto the shore. All right, I'm going to read one last poem. This one goes out to my stalker. Years 2016 to 2017, featured in this poem. It's called Vigilance. The hottest summer on record, I couldn't open the windows. A stranger had sent flowers to my house with a note that read, "Say thank you." I walked from my car to my door like a snake oxbows across the sandy road from dune to dune. Balanced a colander full of silver spoons, a saucer of cat's eyes, a matchbook spreading a mousetrap's jaw, a potted conifer I trimmed with scissors made for a doll on the sill, so I would wake it if somebody broke the feeble lock. I've always been a deep sleeper, though. Roused for a fire drill, a meteor shower, a planet burning thumbprint hanging on the Earth's lip, I would wrap myself in a quilt, tiptoe to the telescope, stare, wonder, remember nothing on waking. I had recently learned that I wanted to live when, in a Kentucky back street, a Nazi leveled his gun at me out the window of a passing motorcade. I was behind a pony wall before I even thought, balled up my body, beetle dumbly stumbling in a magnolia's bloom. Another protester stood in the road and shouted, "What are you gonna do, shoot me?" Oh, animal of me, oh, lungfish, oh, roach, oh, pigeon. My body, not the horse I rode in on, but the horse that I am. It was a surprise. I had always been a blue shred of meat, hung between molars, the flashing microwave clock after an outage, a condom ripped and caught in innards, the shattered screen of a burner phone. I did not know what to do with this new desire to stay on Earth. The stranger's messages had become more urgent. Smile, beautiful. You'd be a lot prettier. Smile, you bitch. Smile or else. It wasn't so simple when I couldn't see the gun. Awake all night, yellowing a silhouette on my mattress in sweat, I thought about throwing open the window, getting it over and done. Blobs of hydrangeas, spittle of baby's breath, the rancid stink of a blackening leaf pressed the bouquet's center. I bent to sniff them, retching over the sink until I was spent. What is it in me that makes me smell what I know to be rotten? Desire forms a fist inside me. The impatient sea of one hand staves the other's diving bell. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. Okay. Vedran Husić was born in Bosnia and Herzegovina and raised in Germany and the United States. His collection of stories, Basements and Other Museums, was published in 2018. He has work published in the Gettysburg Review, Mississippi Review, Ecotone, Blackbird, Image, Electric Literature's Recommended Reading, and elsewhere. Recipient of a Fiction Fellowship from the National Endowment. Please welcome Vedran Husić.
The mic is so hypnotizing. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Andrew, for everything you've done for us. And let me just echo some of the comments. Thank you for the staff who have made this wonderful experience again. Thank you all for coming here. It's a privilege and an honor, as I think you all know by now, to read with Hannah. That was amazing. And it's a privilege and honor to do it a second time, to be here, and I'm sure it is for her as well. And lastly, thank you for all the first year fellows and just to remind them, you have a chance at a second year, so don't be that sad. It'll be different, but it'll be nice. Context, just real quick. So this is, it starts off, I'll read the first section. The character, it's very autobiographical. He's at a cemetery, and then eventually he's just walking around LA grieving. Plot is not that important. The only thing to know is it kind of switches it slips into like first person. Mostly it's in third person, but it does slip into first person, so just if it doesn't throw you off too much. He speaks to her of simple things. He speaks to her. He speaks of his trip, the 2-hour bus ride westbound out of Columbia, the Kansas City airport, the last airport they flew out from together, its claustrophobic tube-like corridors, and the isolated European-style gates he hates so much. Remember those gates, he asks her, that seal one in a small space, sequestered there until boarding, unable to exit once entered, cut off to explore, be diverted by the rest of the airport, other gates, other flights, other lives, other fates. As he speaks to Naira, he doesn't know whether to look down at the grave, down at this bit of practical ground, or up at the sky. It frustrates him, and it frightens him too, choosing sides, that suddenly here there is a choice. He tries not to linger on it, ignores it, delays taking side, concentrating his gaze on the middle distance, a hump of cropped grass, lime green, red flared summer grass, coming into focus as his tears dry and harden on his skin, tightening it at the corners of his eyes and on his cheekbones. When he and Naira went to the Kansas City airport, their last trip together of any kind, they didn't take a bus, driven instead by their friends. Now reminisces with her, which is exactly the right word and very much the wrong one for what I'm doing now, about the late spring rainstorm pummeling the small hatchback every mile for 125 heavily drenched miles on I-70. The rain fell with such ferocity that it felt as he clutched her and clung to her in the cavernous backseat, emblematic of a catalysm, a great disaster they were fleeing. They were heading toward it too. At the time it felt they were only fleeing it, were actually escaping. That furious downpour, the final barrier between them and a new westward hope. An impediment to push against and push through, headlights blazing, the last of their penitent labors. The dense, constant, blurred, mobile curtain of rain, those two laboring beams of light, beacons striving in low visibility, in the darkening gray of bad weather, and his composed optimism at possible escape, a hope feeling more like a reprieve, feeling less than hope. At the airport, it did cease to rain, but all that was just the beginning rumble of a long, irreversibly pregnant, and inescapable calamity. That was the last lives had a sense of speed, a detailed feeling of momentum, progress, that their hope had a kind of velocity, the velocity of escape. It was the unexpectedness of the weather that made it memorable and invitingly symbolic, because it kept a tempo with the unexpectedness of their situation, in rhythm with the charged, harrowing, disturbed atmosphere of their circumstance, crashing light and loud darkness, and the crushing, weightless gravity of it all. But once at the airport, everything seemed normal again, as though it was another visit to her parents, another flight to LA, with no special desperation other than her homesickness and his desire for sunnier weather. And now he can only imagine and remember the flight attendant's blunt, fatalistic synopsis of the safety rules, rehearsals for a crash, or the pilot's distracted intercom chatter, the weather in Los Angeles is, and his leaning over her to look out of the window as the plane started to ascend. Naira, I never want to get accustomed to the miracle of takeoff, greater even than the flight itself. the shrinking, square, agricultural patchwork of the Midwest, giving way to the vague, enveloping heavens. He does remember the warmth of her palm as they climbed, and that was normal as well. The nervousness she still felt at this, the sought reassurance of his hand squeezing back at the spur of fear and love, her instinct to live snapping protectively into place, the human, powerful want not to die, even as she was dying. After his semester of teaching ended, he walked all day. In the morning, starting off from her family home on Whitsett and heading downhill toward Ventura, fog fragmented the mountains rising before him, filling the valley and cushioning the hollows along the canyon trails that were sometimes his midday destination. More often, he was without a destination, walking with a wandering determination, drifting from street to street with aimless persistence. He didn't seek to discover anything. By wandering, however, he placed himself in the way of discovery, stalking unexpected, stalking her ghost. Each morning, abandon everything, begin walking. Throughout the day, take on nothing, keep walking. At night, bring it all back home, sleep. Sleep, walk, think, dream, sleep again. Walk until exhausted, walk, walk, walk. Grief stretched his walks, and he found deeper solitudes in which to be with her, to speak to her, often erratically, sometimes with an erratic eloquence. He wanted always to speak to her, to show Naira every new thing. The instinct of his mind and his heart always turned toward her. Only natural, therefore, in the street to turn toward her, on my right, and tell her something he saw, thought, felt, remembered, dreamed. So why should it be unnatural in the street now to turn toward her again, in any direction, but habitually to the right, and speak to her, talk to her always, tell her everything. Anything his grief asks, his love must answer. But in the depth of his solitude, speech, sadness, he'd be rudely brought up to the surface by an abrupt passerby, or there'd suddenly be someone behind him when there'd been nobody, only a second ago when he last turned to check. Looking over his shoulder all the time, how paranoid he must have appeared. I looked back once, twice, nobody there, and then on a third, gratuitous look, someone suddenly behind me and impossibly close. Or he'd trip and stumble, or step in some gum, or dog shit, or a pothole that made his knees buckle. Children would scream and adults laugh, all these people much too alive, interrupting his guarded-off morning. Joggers sprang upon him. Other pedestrians became a personal affront, caricatures of his need. Everyone in his local universe a challenge to his solitude and the private holiness of his grief. Europe was so much worse, especially Mostar, his birth city, where, unlike Germany, there was so little nature to find solitude in. He became more adaptable, more shrewd, but also more suffering, suffocating from words unsaid. He has numerous decoys now, sunglasses, earphones, a smartphone. He doesn't care for any of them, doesn't want this incognito grief. Wants instead spaciousness and solitude, all of the valley for himself, wants open tears and flowing speech, wants to speak to her and to keep speaking and to speak aloud, to raise his voice over the emptiness placed between them, amend the distance. Each day in his external wandering, he was walking his way out of his internal pathlessness, little by little out of the heart's aporia. But today he isn't wandering as much, for there are places and feeling he wants to revisit here, hurts to retrieve. That's why he's on Moore Park, heading west, beneath a dusky, piss-scented underpass, and out into the unsheathed light, the white, polished, keen noonlight, toward Aroma Cafe and Tea, where he and Naira had their last date. No one says I love you in Armenian, Naira claimed. This is what we say instead. Savad tanem, let me please bear your pain. Driven there to Tahanga Avenue by her father, They managed a short walk together. Delicate steps he had trouble matching, holding onto her arm like he would an elderly woman, like he thought he'd hold her only when he was an elderly man, and being held on by her at 29 with a rigid, tender, devastating need. They walked yoked like that, steady and slow, her need and his devotion to that need, exerting a mutual pressure. A block or two, little, but enough now, before sitting down outside for coffee and dessert. It was October the 10th, their anniversary. The chairs at the cafe were uncomfortable for her. All chairs were. But by now it was impossible to shape her body into any relief. They switched to a cushioned bench, uncomfortable, but less so. Not good, but better. Not good, but good enough. Cake and coffee, nothing tasted right, but she liked being out with him, among healthy, normal people with healthy, normal appetites. At night, talking over the sly music, eating in the warm evening, dressed up, sitting, eyes roaming, seeing, being seen, entertained, stimulated, fulfilled, like the remembered sweetness of being out. Memories of past pleasure padded out the lean and hollow experience of pleasure she felt now. Old pleasures and narrowed pleasures were enough. Dessert only because a whole meal was impossible to get through, and already by the end of the hurriedly sipped coffee, her body began the twitching his own had become accustomed to, vigilant to its quivers. The subtle bristling, the low growling, its muted convulsing, on couches, in beds, in every chair, on this bench. It hurt him so much, all the ways she couldn't find comfort, all the ways she hurt, all the many ways he couldn't alleviate anything. She tried to conceal it, prolong their night out. Naira's mind and the meds tried to control it. But the breakthrough pain did what its name so bluntly suggested, and it showed so nakedly on her beautiful, stricken face. How he wanted to take the pain from her face, then and every time, during and before the cancer. Savad tanem narajan, but he couldn't, he could not. And he didn't know what was worse, what hurt more, the pain in her grimace or the pain in her smile. Roused and nervously stirring, the pain was trapped in a cage of her self-control. She adjusted in her seat, contorted her arms, a distorted expression on her face, the pain shaped by her mouth, a nasty taste, her disgust at it, and her regret. Apologetically, she asked if she could call her dad. An hour, no more than that, and that too was enough. It was okay. All was becoming too hard, from walking to sitting, sleeping to eating. The small moments of pleasure when her pain could be endured, those were enough. They would have been happy with little, with their small outings, like this one. Only later did he realize the sadness of their happiness, the full sadness of how happy they were and for what. After the pain of her dying and her death, what hurt him the most was their small happiness, their small hopes. At the center of his grief, this despairing hope, this sad happiness. But he knew he'd have her then and now, bedridden and wheelchair-bound as she often was, and wish upon her all kind of pain in order to have her live. He'd be less happily settled, but settled nonetheless, taking care of her for the rest of their lives. That'll be life enough for either of them, an existence generously suffered by them both, together. He didn't want her to suffer, but she wanted to survive. Didn't want her to live in pain, but she wanted to live. He'd be her caretaker for life, hold her gently, clumsily, like a first-time lover. Enough, all of that little. He never knew until then how seamlessly love could grade into cruelty. He didn't want her to rest in peace or be in a better place than this, here, with him. It wasn't cruel, just one part of love's perversity, like their sad happiness at the prospect of such a life, of the heart's aporia, or like the hugeness of the little they've been given. Enough. When he looks back It's these remembered moments of despairing hope that hurt more, if he's honest to his pain, than all the recalled hours of her physical anguish. The worst hurt when he remembers the small life they tried to make out of her dying. For 6 months, they all lived on hope. For 6 months, they couldn't tell falling from flying, suspended and buoyed by optimism as voluptuous and thin as air. A house cramped with hope, and every bit of it desperate. Another year, certainly. The doctors thought that too. Maybe 2, maybe even 5, the time limit those doctors put on their infinite hope. But in 5 years, new advances in medicine would surely be made that would prolong her life for another year, or 2, or 5, or 10, and then another 2, or 5, or 10 years, then a cure, or never a cure. I couldn't imagine that, and so couldn't ever hope for it. But enough life to feel like she'd been fully healed from dying young. He couldn't help it. Even at the worst times, the driest times, a small tide pool persisted, becoming a desert ocean of affordances. None of them would be gently chastened for their hope. It's a matter of improvisation, hope. For 6 months he improvised. Hope through April, through its awful discoveries, through each night's wringing of the heart and blunders of mind, through May's accounting of damages and the temporary relief of moving in with her parents, even through the summer months, hope, those summer months which were a hot maze of misery and fear and mercilessness, and every day the horrible, persistent, impossible awareness of her youth and its helplessness. Hope, too, through the deterioration her birthday month brought. Hope for reversal. Then gone. Then the final vanishing of hope. Her death then, and October's recurrent unrelieved breakdowns. Then came November's show of strength and December's coming to terms. All of it an illusion. He never felt so much fear while being safe, because he never felt so truly hopeless. The first hope was their strongest, that the stubbornly throbbing ache in her right arm signified nothing, that its lack of an instantly reassuring diagnosis also signified nothing. Her baffled, unkind primary doctor thought it was mild hysterics, simple hypochondria. But there's no simple hypochondria. She proved that. Calm, grim, learned, messianic, it's hypochondria that bestows the wisdom the actual illness seldom does. The wisdom gleaned from fear, which proves that no suffering is unnecessary, or that all is. And people are mostly their fears, almost exclusively the unfounded ones. Naira wanted to believe her primary, but there was the unwavering omen of her right arm. A second opinion was sought. She went with their friend Heather, as he had to teach at that time. A new doctor, also baffled, but kinder, diagnosed her with pneumonia. Finally, confirmation, safe sense. They met up again at their shared grad school office when a phone call interrupted their planning for dinner. The second doctor had earlier scheduled an appointment for an x-ray, just to make sure, to corroborate his diagnosis that he'd based purely on her symptoms. Heather, since they didn't have a car, was recalled. X-rays were taken. The 3 of them waited for results. Their conversation was innocent. School, weather, Heather's pregnancy. A technician mentioned in passing resemblance to some country artist, and they talked about that. The music in the waiting room up-tempo and hopeful, like in all waiting rooms, nothing out of the ordinary. It was their last moment of complete innocence, at least his. Did she shed some of hers, much of it, all of it, as they sat there waiting? The delay of the results was starting to be more felt, and with it the anxiety at the delay. All 3 of them felt it, a collective unease, a shared ripening of nerves. Another told them that the results had been sent to her doctor, the second one, and that he discussed them with her. The unease quickened, but he explained it away as part of the process, simple protocol. Once there, he let her go into the doctor's office by herself, because to go in with her would have disturbed his obstinate, willed neutrality, made more of these events than they were worth, needlessly tempt the tragic impulse of fate. He spoke and joked too hard with Heather, but as soon as she'd entered, Naira was back out, asking him now to come in. It took a bit of strength to get up from the chair, more to walk toward her, and still more to follow her through the door into the doctor's office and leave behind forever the innocent, earnest, overcompensating sanity of the waiting room. It took some strength not to refuse her when she asked for him to come in, because he wasn't even supposed to be in this office at all, wasn't supposed to meet this doctor, and he never was supposed to hear what this doctor had to say to them. Still, as he walked toward her under his own strength, logic or illogic, whatever it is that helps the mind and heart survive this, whispered into his ear, calmly, but with an unsteady, worried note, that it was nothing, that it just couldn't be anything. He was calm, but really he was already numb, sitting in the armchair next to Naira, holding her hand as the doctor, a stranger to her, confused by the diagnostic place as her primary, someone she had a personal relationship with, and so to break horrible news, as he said, what? What did he say? What could he say? The unsayable, no, the unhearable. But they did hear it. Just her hearing it. His hurt doubled, hearing it himself and seeing her hear it. The clenched disbelief in her face, in her large staring eyes, then the slow, curdled recognition of the words the doctor was saying, and then the sour courage of her composure. He tried to appear composed too, to not let the angular scroll of panic that disfigured his heart rise up to his face, but he must have still looked numb. Presenting the X-ray, the doctor explained what was wrong with the picture they were looking at. Later, when he had to have a chest X-ray done himself, he recalled how his was a clean, black, starless night, with none of the scar-white, innocent-looking wisps over her lungs, the small cloud cover that obscured part of her ribcage. There it was, in black and white, the possibility of cancer, the X-ray, like hope's negative, radiating dread, smokelessly burning before their eyes. Naira looked at him once, composed and helpless, while the doctor spoke, and he looked helplessly back at her, squeezing her hand, squeezing it tighter, her other hand gently balled. She cracked her knuckles by making a fist. While Heather quietly drove, lending them a privacy awkward and generous, they leaned into one another in the back seat, holding on to each other's solid presence with the knowledge that even if there was no cancer, survived the cancer, their life had changed. Or maybe they already knew there was cancer and she wouldn't survive. At home, in bed, she let him lay his head in her lap and he let her comfort him with her hands. All the abstraction of all this hope. Simply, it's that he knows she's not here. You're not with me. In doubt, everything's possible. Though about this, I have no doubt, and therefore it's impossible. But he doesn't believe she's not anywhere. Please, please, to the sky, the earth, God, anything, to everything, to the nameless mystery, the ear-shaped, powerful void, please let her be present. Let her be present somewhere, in some form he can't yet imagine, in any form, even if her being and his never align in time and space again. More abstraction. To think of her within science and religion or outside of space and time is to philosophize his grief and distance himself from it immeasurably. One cannot speculate in screams. Yet his mind goes on, his heart and his hope, they go on, his screaming, speculative prayer. Let her be bodiless and without the pain of cancer. And if it's absolutely necessary for her continued existence, let her, his Naira, be memoryless too, and without the pain of missing him. Let her be safe in a changed, distant form. Let her know what he can't imagine now, and let her forget everything he still remembers. And when he dies, let him know what she knows, even if it means not knowing her. No, then let him know nothing. Thank you.
Vedran. Thank you both. Thank you all for being here tonight. We hope you'll join us next week. We have Ada Limon and Nick Flynn on Thursday night. And on Saturday evening, we'll have Jhumpa Lahiri. Please join me one last time in giving our fellows a round of applause.